welcome to CVR English World News. This is Pravalika. Let's get into the details. A powerful 6.3 magnitude earthquake struck Indonesia's Sumatra Island, worsening the crisis in the nation already battling deadly flash floods and landslides that have killed more than 25 people. The quake center near Aceh province at a depth of 10 kilometers posed no tsunami threat. A catastrophic blaze ripped through multiple high-rise buildings in a densely populated Hong Kong apartment complex, killing at least 44 people and leaving hundreds unaccounted for. Firefighters and emergency teams are battling through thick smoke, collapsing structures, and intense heat as they search for survivors in one of the city's deadliest residential fires in decades. Firefighters made slow progress early Thursday after a fast-moving blaze engulfed several high-rise towers in Hong Kong, killing at least 40 people and trapping others inside. Authorities reported 29 people hospitalized, 7 in critical condition, and 279 people listed as missing nearly 12 hours after the fire began. Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee confirmed the casualty and missing person figures as emergency crews continued search and rescue operations at the scene. The cause of the inferno is under investigation and rescue efforts are ongoing. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz addressed Parliament, stressing that Russian President Vladimir Putin cannot achieve a successful outcome in the Ukraine war. Merz emphasized European unity, Germany's expanded financial support to Ukraine, and the importance of European consent for any peace deal. He announced that Germany will increase its aid to Ukraine to Euros 11.5 billion in the 2026 budget, reaffirming the country's commitment alongside the US and Ukraine toward a sustainable and lawful peace.
We will not slow down in our support for Ukraine. We will support the Ukrainian people for as long as necessary. And we want to make the frozen Russian assets available for precisely this purpose. Putin must realize that he has no chance of winning this war at the expense of European freedom and peace, ladies and gentlemen. And that is why Germany will continue to provide Ukraine with a very high level of support in the 2026 federal budget. In light of recent events, we have increased the amount by a further 3 billion euros to a total of 11.5 billion euros. And we are making a further 170 billion euros available immediately for infrastructure. This is to mitigate the effects of Russia's terror campaign against Ukraine's winter supplies. Not a word about this in the first speech we heard this morning, ladies and gentlemen, refers to speech from leader of the far-right German Alternative for Germany, Alice Weidel. This, too, is a sign of how humanely you think about the fate of the people in our immediate neighborhood. Which you are experiencing these days, weeks and months. This is the guiding principle of our policy on Ukraine in particular. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we want this war to end as quickly as possible. But an agreement negotiated between great powers without the consent of Ukraine and without the consent of the Europeans will not be the basis for a genuine, sustainable peace in Ukraine.
Und deshalb kommt es jetzt ganz entscheidend an. Auf Einheit in Europa,
that is why unity in Europe, unity with Ukraine and unity in the transatlantic alliance are now crucial. I therefore welcome the continued American commitment to resolving this conflict. I said the same thing to President Trump in a phone call last Friday. But at this fateful moment for Ukraine, for Europe, and for our alliance with America, I also want to make it clear that decisions on European matters can only be made by mutual consent. Europe is not a pawn, but a sovereign actor pursuing its own interests and values. Amid all these developments, we must not low.
Guinea-Bissau's military has accused ousted President Umaro Sissoco Embalo of secretly plotting to destabilize the country, claiming he conspired with a well-known national and foreign drug baron. According to Brigadier General Denis Nkaha, the alleged plot forced the military to act decisively, leading to Embalo's immediate removal from office.
Militar para restauração de segurança nacional e ordem pública. Comunicado. Instaurado pela alta chefia de diferentes ramos das Forças Armadas, o Alto Comando Militar para a Restauração de Segurança Nacional e Ordem Pública acaba de assumir plenitude dos poderes do Estado da República da Guiné-Bissau. Profundamente comprometido com os valores de segurança nacional, paz civil, da defesa da integridade territorial e independência da Guiné-Bissau, o Alto Comando Militar para a Restauração de Segurança Nacional e Ordem Pública reage à descoberta de plano em curso de desestabilização do nosso país, para a operacionalização da qual se montou esquema operacional oriundo de alguns políticos nacionais com a participação do conhecido barão de droga, nacionais e estrangeiros, bem como tentativa de manipulação de resultados eleitorais. Para a efetivação desse plano, foi descoberto pelo Serviço de Informação de Estado depósito de armamento de guerra. Assim, e até que toda a situação seja convenientemente esclarecida e reposta as condições para o pleno retorno à normalidade constitucional. O Alto Comando Militar para a Restauração de Segurança Nacional e Ordem Pública decide depor imediatamente o Presidente da República, encerrar até a novas ordens todas as instituições da República da Guiné-Bissau. Suspender novas ordens, até a novas ordens, as atividades de todos os órgãos de comunicação social. Suspender imediatamente o processo eleitoral em curso. Encerrar a fronteira terrestre, marítimo, espaço aéreo nacional. Estabelecer recolher obrigatório das 19 horas até 6 horas.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen told the UE Parliament that US-Ukraine peace talks led by President Donald Trump are only a starting point and that Europe must keep pressure on Russia until a just lasting peace is reached. She welcomed ongoing US efforts but stressed that any agreement must guarantee real security for Ukraine and the UE. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he is ready to advance the US-backed peace framework.
And this is why Europe must keep up the pressure on Russia until there is a just and lasting peace. Europe will stand with Ukraine and support Ukraine every step of the way. Can bring about a real peace, the violence escalates. We have seen a just and lasting peace. This is what we all want. And this is why Europe supports all efforts to build that peace for Ukraine, a peace that stops the killing, one that avoids setting a dangerous precedent, one that guarantees Ukraine's security and its sovereign rights in the long term, and that ensures a robust security architecture for Europe. This is why we welcome the efforts led by President Trump. After months of discussions, it is important that the work on an actual text started. Of course, we know that much more effort is needed. But I believe, thanks to the work of Ukraine, the United States, and us Europeans over the last few days in Geneva, we now have a starting point, one that avoids setting a dangerous precedent. Any agreement should deliver a just and lasting peace. And it should ensure real security for Ukraine and Europe. And this is as much about deterrence as it is about Europe's security, because Ukraine's security is Europe's security, so Ukraine needs robust, long-term and credible security guarantees as part of a wider package to dissuade and deter any future attacks from Russia. As a sovereign nation, there can be no limitations on Ukraine's armed forces, so we need to be clear that there cannot be unilateral carving up of a sovereign European nation, and that borders cannot be changed by force. If today we legitimize and formalize the
Kyrgyz President Sadir Japarov announced that Russia now accounts for 22% of Kyrgyzstan's total foreign trade turnover, highlighting Moscow's role as a major economic partner. Speaking at SCTO summit in Bishkek, Japarov emphasized the importance of deepening political, economic and regional security cooperation. The summit brought together member states to discuss defense, trade and strategic collaboration.
Уважаемые представители средств массовой информации, дамы и господа, еще раз сердечно приветствую президента Российской Федерации, уважаемого Владимира Владимировича Путина, с государственным визитом в Кыргызскую республику. Символично, что ваш визит, уважаемый Владимир Владимирович, проходит в 25-ю годовщину подписания между нашими странами, декларация о вечной дружбе, союзничестве и партнерстве. Кыргызско-российские взаимоотношения обусловлены вековой дружбой между нашими народами, тесными культурно-гуманитарными узами и общим историческим наследием. Хочу вновь заверить в неизменной приверженности Кыргызской Республики делу укрепления союзнических отношений и исторического партнерства с Российской Федерацией. Хочу особо подчеркнуть, что это партнерство отвечает долгосрочным национальным интересам. Мы с уважаемым Владимиром Владимировичем обсудили актуальные вопросы текущей повестки дня по широкому спектру направлений. С удовлетворением отметили высокий уровень кыргызско-российского сотрудничества, сделали детальный обзор хода исполнения всех наших договоренностей, достигнутых в ходе нашей встречи в Москве в июле текущего года. Сегодня в расширенном формате при участии руководителей ключевых министерств и ведомств двух стран мы в традиционно доверительной атмосфере рассмотрели широкий комплекс вопросов. По многим вопросам отметили поступательное продвижение вперед, по отдельным направлениям дали соответствующие поручения.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky delivered a stark update after what he called a long and difficult day, marked by a massive Russian strike on multiple regions. In a video message, Zelensky said he received continuous reports from the military, the Interior Ministry, and regional authorities regarding Ukraine's countermeasures and ongoing recovery efforts. He described that the attack particularly cynical, noting that it occurred while active discussions on ending the war are underway. Zelensky said the United States, Europe and other international partners remain fully engaged in supporting negotiations, but stressed that Russia continues to treat the war as its top priority. He urged Ukraine's allies not to lose sight of realities on the ground and emphasized the need to counter Russian strikes 24/7.
Бажаю здоров'я. Важкий, довгий сьогоднішній день. Від ночі доповіді військових, МВС, доповідь з регіонів по нашій протидії російському удару та по нашому відновленню. Масований був удар, особливо цинічно, що Росія завдає таких ударів, коли тривають розмови щодо того, як закінчити війну. Америка дуже активна, і Європа дуже активна, також інші наші партнери. У всіх один порядок денний, і тільки у Москви незмінно війна проти України залишається першим пріоритетом для них. Удари, як сьогодні, це підтверджують. І тому для нас усіх надзвичайно важливо не забувати реальну ситуацію, не забувати, що відбувається тут і зараз, і протидіяти російським ударам. І, звісно, протидіяти 24/7. 24/7 українські представники працюють з Америкою і з тими, хто може допомогти, щоб були дійсно реальні, ефективні кроки для закінчення цієї війни. Так само 24/7. Робимо все, щоб у нашої армії, щоб у наших людей були можливості захисту. Сьогодні відбулася зустріч коаліції охочих. Дуже предметна розмова. Я хочу подякувати передусім Еммануелю Макрону, Кіру Стармеру, Фрідріху Мерцу за співорганізацію. І від Америки був Марко Рубіо. Було майже 40 учасників. Європа, Сполучені Штати, була Канада, Японія, Австралія, Нова Зеландія. Надзвичайно важливий меседж, який об'єднує всіх нас. Маємо дуже предметно координувати нашу дипломатію.
Pope Leo has arrived in Turkey for his first overseas trip, a visit closely monitored by international observers and security agencies. The Turkish government implemented enhanced security protocols around Ankara and key destinations on the pontiff's itinerary, with police, rapid response teams and surveillance units positioned throughout the capital. The visit is expected to focus on interfaith dialogue, diplomatic engagement and outreach to regional religious leaders. Turkish officials say coordination between national security agencies and the Vatican began weeks earlier to ensure a controlled, safe environment throughout the Pope's stay.
Davanti! Davanti! Davanti!
Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva celebrated the historic 27-year prison sentence of ex-President Jair Bolsonaro for attempting a coup. Lula called the verdict a lesson in democracy and praised Brazil's justice system for showing strength amid external pressure. This marks the first time in Brazil's history, and the former president has been imprisoned for a coup attempt, emphasizing the country's commitment to the rule of law.
Senhoras e senhores, com a palavra o presidente da República, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva.
Esse país ontem deu uma lição de democracia ao mundo. Ao mundo. Sem nenhum alarde, a justiça brasileira mostrou a sua força, não se amedrontou com as ameaças de fora e fez um julgamento primoroso, onde não tem uma acusação de oposição. É tudo acusação de dentro da quadrilha que tentou dar um golpe nesse país em 2008. Eu vou ter que sair para fazer a reunião com ela. Eu queria agradecer os prefeitos, as prefeitas, os companheiros deputados e deputadas que estão aqui. Pela primeira vez em 500 anos na história desse país, você tem alguém preso por tentativa de golpe. Você tem um ex-presidente da República e você tem 4 generais de 4 estrelas presos. Numa demonstração de que democracia vale para todos. Democracia não é privilégio de ninguém, é um direito.
2 National Guard soldiers were critically injured after a gunman opened fire near White House and what authorities described as a targeted attack. The shooting took place at the corner of 17th and 1 streets where the soldiers were carrying out a high-visibility patrol. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed at a joint press briefing that both victims were in critical condition and that federal agencies were coordinating closely with Metropolitan Police Department. Patel said the FBI was leading the investigation and stressed that early evidence indicates the attack specifically targeted the uninformed personnel. Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser also described the shooting as targeted, noting that the motive remains unknown. The suspect was wounded during the incident, taken into custody at the scene and is currently receiving medical treatment.
We're here to brief you on the tragic events that happened today at approximately 2:15 local time in Washington, D.C., where 2 of our brave members of the National Guard and the Department of War were brazenly attacked in a horrendous act of violence. They were shot. They're in critical condition. As you can see behind me, we have assembled the full force of both the federal and state and local law enforcement agencies to bring bear all of our resources to make sure we find the perpetrators responsible for this heinous act. And make no mistake, they will be brought to justice. Since this is an assault on a federal law enforcement officer, this will be treated at the federal level as an assault on a federal